Princess Anne did not raise her voice. She did something far more devastating. As Queen Camilla reached across the polished table with one final plea trembling behind carefully chosen words, Anne quietly pushed a sealed envelope back toward her. Nobody in the room expected what happened next. Camilla's face drained of color before she had even opened it. King Charles froze. Prince William looked between the two women without speaking. Even the royal aides standing against the wall suddenly understood they were witnessing something that would never appear in any official record. The silence became the loudest sound inside the palace. What was hidden inside that envelope? And why did Princess Anne decide that this was the exact moment to end a battle that had been building behind closed doors for years? Before we continue, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's uncover the story everyone believed would remain buried forever. I'm Roland. I spend my minute going through everything that moves around this family. For months, rumors had circled through palace corridors that the balance of power inside the royal family was quietly changing. Public appearances remained polished. Smiles were rehearsed. Every photograph suggested unity. Reality looked nothing like the pictures. King Charles had become increasingly dependent on a shrinking circle of advisors. Queen Camilla wanted stability. She believed one carefully negotiated family agreement could prevent future fractures before they became permanent. Her final request seemed simple. She wanted Princess Anne to publicly support a restructuring of several royal responsibilities that would quietly strengthen Camilla's influence during an uncertain period. Anne listened without interrupting. Then she refused. Not dramatically, not emotionally. Simply, no. It stunned everyone because Anne almost never rejected requests outright. But this time she had arrived carrying something nobody else knew existed: the envelope. Camilla finally opened it. Inside wasn't a letter, it was a timeline. Every meeting, every proposal, every alteration suggested over several years. Every private recommendation documented with dates, witnesses, and handwritten notes from senior palace officials. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't scandalous, but it revealed a relentless campaign to consolidate influence far beyond what most family members had understood. Camilla's expression changed instantly. Not because she had been exposed, because she suddenly realized Anne had known for much longer than anyone imagined. King Charles asked one quiet question. "Where did this come from?" Anne answered with only 4 words. "I kept every record." Nobody spoke after that. Then another shock arrived. Prince Edward, who had remained largely silent throughout months of growing tension, quietly admitted he had seen portions of those documents years earlier. He had assumed Anne was simply preserving history, as she always had. He never imagined she was preparing for the exact day those records might become necessary. The room shifted. This was no longer a disagreement. It had become evidence of trust that had slowly dissolved inside the family itself. Camilla looked toward Charles, hoping he would dismiss the documents as misunderstandings collected over time. Instead, he asked for every page. Anne handed them over without hesitation. She had brought duplicates. That single detail revealed something unsettling. She had expected resistance. As Charles turned each page, another realization emerged. Several recommendations attributed publicly to palace committees had actually originated from private conversations involving only a handful of trusted insiders. Nothing criminal, nothing explosive enough for newspapers. Yet together, they painted a picture of influence quietly expanding while responsibility remained deliberately blurred. Camilla finally broke her silence. She admitted she had pushed harder than she should have. Not for wealth, not for titles, for security. She feared the monarchy would fracture after years of public controversy, changing loyalties, and endless media pressure. She believed stronger centralized control would protect the institution from itself. For the first time, Anne saw genuine fear instead of calculation. It lasted only a moment. Because another door opened, Prince William entered carrying a folder of his own. Nobody had asked him to bring it. Inside were communications from several senior advisors expressing concern that ongoing internal disagreements were beginning to affect long-term planning. Staff morale had quietly deteriorated. Experienced officials had requested transfers. Some feared becoming trapped between competing expectations. William placed the folder beside Anne's envelope. The pattern became impossible to ignore. The conflict had spread far beyond family emotions. It was weakening the institution itself. Charles leaned back. His shoulders seemed heavier than they had all morning. Then came the revelation nobody expected. The palace secretary informed the room that portions of these internal disagreements had already reached journalists, not published, held. Several respected editors had chosen not to print unverified palace disputes out of caution, but they possessed enough fragments that one significant leak could ignite months of damaging headlines. The threat was no longer hypothetical. The clock had started ticking. Camilla's final plea suddenly made perfect sense. She hadn't come seeking victory. She had come seeking silence before everything collapsed into public view. Anne refused again. This time her words landed like stone. Silence built this problem. Nobody challenged her. Hours passed. Documents were reviewed. Conversations replayed. Memories contradicted one another. Then another unexpected figure entered. Princess Anne's daughter, Zara Tyndall. She wasn't there to participate in royal politics. She had been asked one simple question. What had younger members of the extended family observed over recent years? Her answer stunned everyone. She described family gatherings where conversations abruptly stopped whenever certain advisors entered the room. Decisions seemed increasingly filtered before reaching relatives. Younger generations noticed invisible walls long before older ones acknowledged them. Children had recognized what adults ignored. The room became painfully quiet. Charles slowly removed his glasses. He wasn't looking at paperwork anymore. He was looking at years that could never be repeated. Camilla stared toward the window without speaking. For the first time, she appeared less like a queen than a woman exhausted by defending choices that no longer defended her. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Among Anne's records lay one unopened letter addressed to King Charles. It had never been delivered, not because someone intercepted it, because Anne herself had withheld it. Years earlier, a respected retired palace official had privately warned that concentrating too much informal influence around any single individual, regardless of intention, would eventually isolate the monarch from honest disagreement. Anne had believed the warning premature. She filed it away instead. Now she handed it to Charles. He read every word, slowly. When he finished, he folded the letter with extraordinary care. Nobody asked what it said. They didn't need to. His face answered the question. He realized the warning had arrived years before the consequences. Camilla quietly whispered something barely audible. "I thought I was protecting you." Charles looked at her for a long moment. "I know." Those two words carried more sadness than anger. Yet they changed nothing. By evening, the decision had been made. The proposed restructuring would never move forward. Several advisory roles would be reviewed independently. Future decisions involving family responsibilities would require broader consultation rather than private negotiations. Nobody celebrated. There were no winners, only damage being contained before becoming irreversible. Outside the palace, the public remained unaware of what had unfolded. Official schedules continued. Ceremonies continued. Smiles continued. But inside those walls, relationships had permanently shifted. Trust, once fractured, refused easy repair. Camilla accepted the outcome without another appeal. She understood that pushing further would only deepen the divide she had hoped to prevent. Anne returned every original document to secure archives, not as trophies, as history. History had a habit of returning whenever people believed it had disappeared. Weeks later, one senior palace aide quietly remarked that meetings had changed. People spoke more openly. Disagreements surfaced earlier, decisions took longer. Yet somehow, they became stronger. Anne never discussed the confrontation publicly. Neither did Charles. Neither did Camilla. The palace simply moved forward, carrying invisible scars hidden beneath polished tradition. Some believed Anne had crushed Camilla's final plea with ruthless precision. Others believed she had saved the monarchy from a quieter danger that nobody wanted to admit existed. Perhaps both were true, because sometimes the most devastating victory isn't defeating an opponent, it's forcing everyone in the room to confront the truth they spent years avoiding. And perhaps the greatest shock wasn't what Princess Anne revealed. It was how many people already suspected pieces of it, but lacked the courage to say them aloud until someone finally placed the evidence on the table. If this story surprised you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more dramatic royal stories, and tell us in the comments, if you had been in King Charles's position, would you have stood with Camilla or with Princess Anne when the truth finally surfaced?